So, you've decided to play 10 Candles. Congratulations, you've just taken your first step towards a horrible, untimely death. So, 10 Candles is a zero prep, one-shot tabletop roleplay game. If you're unfamiliar with roleplay games, what one-shot means is that it's designed to be played in just one single session, as opposed to a campaign which might be played in one of the larger, more mainstream games like, say, Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, where it's designed for the same party of players to come back session after session after session and continue developing characters with an ongoing story. A one-shot is just... if you think of a campaign as like a TV series, a one-shot is like a movie. It's just sit down, play it, it's over. Now, 10 Candles is a very rules-light roleplay game, which makes it quite nice for people who are a little bit daunted by the concept of all the different dice and character sheets and everything like that. I mean, if you consider this is the rulebook for Privateer Press's Iron Kingdoms roleplay, and this is the rulebook for Fantasy Flight's Star Wars Edge of the Empire roleplay game. This is 10 Candles, and to be fair, half of this rulebook is gameplay examples and scenario ideas, so it's very, very rules light. Now, 10 Candles is what is referred to as a tragedy horror game. It's not considered a survival horror by the creators themselves, for the very simple reason none of the players are getting out alive. It's very important to know this going in for two main reasons. First of all is so that no players are left feeling like, oh no, the game was stacked against me from the start, it wasn't fair. Well, it was stacked against you from the start, that's the nature of the game, unfortunately, but it's what makes it fun. Secondly, knowing that the players are all going to die, it does mean that your decisions will be made based on telling a good story rather than trying to sort of win the game. A lot of the times when I've played, players have done things to their characters or made decisions on behalf of their characters which have played out for their character very badly, but which tell a very good story. So by knowing that no one's getting out alive, it means that you can focus more on creating a really good narrative rather than just trying to survive. Now, there is a very basic concept around 10 Candles, which is why it's designed to be played by the light of 10 tea light candles. This concept is deliberately vague in order that it can be applied to any number of scenarios. It could be applied to real world setting, fantasy, science fiction. You could even do it very specific to a franchise that you might enjoy, like Star Wars or Game of Thrones, hell, even Avatar: The Last Airbender. Whatever it is that you fancy, you can apply 10 Candles to it. The basic concept of 10 Candles is this: 10 days ago, the world went dark. There is no explanation of why it went dark, but the sun went out and the world was plunged into darkness. 5 days ago, they appeared. And again, they are left deliberately vague, so they could be aliens, they could be some kind of Lovecraftian horrors, they could be the Salvation Army. It's entirely up to the players and the GM to let that unfold as the game progresses. And the players will take on the roles of survivors in this dark apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, and they are just trying to stay alive. If you think of it like one of these horror films where all of the characters die at the end, that's basically it. The players know their characters are going to die, but it's essential that the characters themselves think that they can get through this, and they are just trying to live through the horrors that are ensued. So, on the subject of it being like a film, the game takes place over the course of what are referred to as 10 scenes, and each scene is represented by one of the 10 tea lights. In one of these scenes, whenever a player fails a dice roll, it ends the scene, one of the candles is extinguished, and then the game moves on to the next scene. And it does so until you're down to the last single candle, and at that point, if a player fails a dice roll, the candle isn't extinguished, the player is. And it progresses that way until the final player has died, and then that last candle goes out. So, as mentioned, it is a very, very rules light game. Unlike a lot of these other role plays like Dungeons and Dragons Edge of the Empire, which have lots of different fancy wonderful dice, 10 Candles is played with nice simple d6s, which everyone who has ever played a board game as a kid is going to be familiar with. So you don't have various skills like in some role plays where you might have a dexterity skill, a strength skill, intelligence skill. You don't have anything like that. Anytime that you want to attempt anything as a player, you basically roll a number of d6s equal to the number of tea lights still lit. And in order to succeed, all you need to roll is one single 6. You can roll 9 ones and 1 6 and you have successfully passed that test. However, for every 1 that you roll, that dice is removed from your dice pool until the end of this scene. So as the scene goes on, it gets progressively more and more difficult to succeed in your dice roll. Then when you do inevitably fail and one of the candles is extinguished, the dice pool is then refilled back up to the number of candles still remaining. So your second scene, you will have 9 dice, 8, 7, 6, etc. until there is only 1 candle remaining, and every last desperate scramble to stay alive depends on a 6 out of your 1 remaining dice. Now, one thing that does make this very different from a lot of other role plays is that it is much more like a collective storytelling experience where everybody gets to contribute quite significantly to it. Whereas in I'll keep using the example, in say Dungeons and Dragons, you are playing the role of your character and the GM just controls everything else. They control non-player characters, NPCs, they control the events of the world around you, and you are just basically playing your character inside their story. In 10 Candles, it is much more everybody else's story, in which you are also controlling your character, obviously. But a perfect example is, say, in D&D, you say, I want to search a room. Okay, make me a skill check, and you roll. It's like, congratulations, you passed your test. This is what you found in that room. Whereas 10 Candles, it would be more a case of, okay, I want to search a room. Okay, great, roll the dice. Congratulations, you passed your dice roll. You tell me what you just found in that room. So it allows the players to have a much more of an impact on the overall story than rather than just exactly what their character is doing. It also means that you might be doing dice rolls at more points than you would in sort of another role play game. For example, it might be a case of, right, I'm going to enter that room. It's like, great, give me a dice roll. And it's not a case of, I'm making you do a dice roll to see if you can walk through a door. Of course you can walk through a door. It's a case of, I'm making you do a dice roll because if you succeed in that dice roll, you can tell me what's on the other side of that door. So it gives a lot of the story progression to the players, and it bounces sort of back and forth between the players and the GM and makes for a very organic joint storytelling experience, which is a lot of fun. As the game goes on and the dice pool goes down, the dice which are removed each round go to the GM. And every time that the players have to do a skill check, the GM gets to roll their dice pool. Now, the GM can't make the players fail their dice roll. If you've rolled a 6, you've still passed it, and the GM can't take that away from you. But if the GM rolls more 6s or equal 6s to the player, then they get to decide the course of action from the success. So it's basically very it makes for a very interesting sort of exchange of power, basically. Whereas early on in the game, the players are succeeding most of their dice rolls and determining the course of the story. But then, as the dice start to shift over to the GM, then they start to gain more ownership back of the story, and it does again feel a lot like a sort of survival horror film where early on the party might feel, yes, we're in control of this situation, and as events spiral out of their control, it gets more and more desperate towards the end until you're just desperately trying to survive like one moment after the next. There is one other way in which the story does progress, and that is called Speaking Truths. And that has got a little bit of depth to it, so I will cover that in another video. But that was the basics of 10 Candles. Basically, you roll dice, 6s are good, 1s are bad, and when the last candle goes out, everybody dies. Thank you for coming to my death talk.